there thinking you're all like anonymous and shit up in Minnesota, but it's just not true.
I've got my mead compound up here, like Prince had, his over there. And,
12-foot walls and, hidden behind the snowbanks, right? Polar bears roaming the perimeter.
Dresses like honeybees.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That's hysterical.
That's just wrong on so many levels.
Playing pickup basketball games dressed as honeybees.
Little shorty honeybee outfits, and you're like, buzz on over to the pool, honey, and get me a drink. Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
Oh, jeez. That's terrible. Yeah, had I realized you were up that way, I probably would have. Well, I should have connected with the Minnesota crowd when I went through this summer, because I passed right by you guys on my way from the UP to head into North Dakota. So basically, I stopped in Wisconsin, and then we sort of blew through with Minnesota into North Dakota.
What?
Yeah, well, I only had so many days, and I actually had to really get. As it was, my husband was like, next time we do one of these things, we are so not taking off every 2 days. That is not happening. Because we're pulling a 43-foot fifth wheel, and it's like a major pain in the butt to be like, alrighty then, that was Wisconsin. What's next? Yeah, but I visited 45 meaderies in about 75 days.
There are that many commercial meaderies now?
Dude, there's over 400 commercial meaderies. You need to come out of your compound more often.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Biggest growing commercial alcoholic beverage in the United States.
In the United States, yeah, we're growing faster than beer and cider put together right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a new meadery opening on average every 3 days right now.
Seriously?
Huh. Yeah. It's just stupid. I mean, I've been tracking meaderies since there wasn't any, and since Chaucer's was it, and and so I've seen the growth has just been in the last 10 years. It's just been freaking phenomenal. Just like just like right blown out of the water.
Even Chaucer's just had to get better.
Yeah, they did. Okay, you know how we always called it the Budweiser mead? Yeah. Back in the day? Okay, yeah. Well, about 7 or 8 years ago, I think they got tired of getting called that because they went up, visited Mike Fowler Rabbit's Foot, and had it reformulated. And then they took a gold the next year at the Major Cup. And we were all stunned.
Really?
When the results were revealed, we were like, that can't be right. And I mean, but it was. I mean, they had some there, and it was quite good. I mean, it's still very sweet, but that's the way they make their mead. There are plenty of very sweet meads that are very good, but it wasn't. It was good. It was good mead, and we were all like, "Good, that's great. We want all the meads to be good." So thank you, Chaucer's, for being willing to improve. If you can, you should.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I wish I could say that to some of the really horrible ones that I had when I was judging last year. Oh, Chris says he had another. No, Chris, I didn't see your question. What was it? Chris asked.
I did.
Oh, did you?
He's got a gallon of his last bomb, which is the Bray's 1 month mead made with 1388, in a side container with an ounce of dried rose hips in it for secondary. And he says it's been on it for about a week and a half. It's pleasant, but he thinks he wants something more out of it. Any suggestions?
What is BOMB? I'm sorry.
It's an acronym. Bray Denard came up with a 1 month mead recipe that he makes with 1388, and when you do it according to what he says, it makes a pretty decent mead in a month. And so this is what he's making. It sounds like a traditional bomb that he put an ounce of dried rose hips on it in secondary. So.
Maybe some raspberries.
Yeah.
I mean, the Flavor Bible is your go-to there. What goes with roses, rose hips, or...
I'd try some...
So that's what I was...
Yeah.
It was star thistle honey.
Which has got a little bit of a peppery note to it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, maybe some fruit.
Yeah. 7% session, he says. Okay, so that rose hips. What about like a little citrus? No, rose hips are already citrusy, aren't they?
Strawberries.
Strawberries might work. Something with a little smoke, maybe some chipotle or possibly even some coriander might be interesting.
I've never done a rosehip mead.
Yeah, rose hips are spicy and citrusy. They're really good for staving off scurvy. You know, yeah. I mean,
I think they're high in citric acid.
They're very high in citric acid. Yeah.
Sorry, it would be ascorbic acid for
There you
vitamin
go.
C.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, have you got a flavor Bible?
I just ordered one.
Yeah.
You guys talk so much about it.
It's a great book. Okay, Bobby Slants is chiming in. He's good. He's really great at combining flavors. He says Hawthorne or Lavender. Ooh, those are both good ideas.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lavender.
I'm not 100% sold on Hawthorne, but that just is because I'm not crazy about the flavor of Hawthorne, but Lavender I like.
Yeah.
Chris, get a flavor Bible. Go to the show page. On this episode page, there is a link. Get you one. Yeah, I like the idea of lavender. I think that would work really good, what Bobby said.
How much lavender would you put in a gallon?
In a gallon? Yeah, not more than a couple handfuls, I would think.
Yeah, because that's what he's got, a gallon.
Yeah. No more than a couple handfuls. And Chris, have I steered you? He says he bought the last 2 books I recommended. I said, and have I steered you wrong yet, Chris? Really? Go get the book. Yeah. To which AJ replies, yeah, this is an expensive podcast we have here. Buy the books. Buy the books.
I know, man. Every time I come on, I end up buying 3 books. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're just evil that way. You got to push the books.
Yeah.
Everybody should have a Mead Library.
That's right. That's right. I've got like 2 shelves.
I think I only have about 4 books.
I don't know. Okay, so that's a good question. Steve, what's your favorite Mead book?
Let's see.
I know Complete Meadmaker goes without saying, but everybody's got that one, so.
I've got that one in Piazza's book. That's about it.
I like Piazza's book. It's a good book.
Other than that, I can't think of any mead books.
Well, Ashton and what's his name?
Well, yeah, Ashton, yeah, but that's like old-timey. And there's a lot of interesting ideas in there, but I wouldn't recommend it to a noob, definitely.
No.
You make scary mead.
Yeah. A good thing to get is a honey book.
Yeah.
That's a good, always good to read up on honey.
Yeah, I'm ordering adjunct books now. The yeast, I'm getting the yeast book. Well, I got the yeast book, and is it Ray Daniels' book? Trying to think of the name of it now. Chris White's Yeast: A Practical Guide to Beer Fermentation, and then Ray Daniels wrote one about like everything you ever want to know about fermenting, because fermenting is fermenting is fermenting. Doesn't matter what you're making; it's still fermenting.
Right.
So then I got that one too. So those are my like ones I'm reading now. Oh, Chris says he has so many questions, but they're all more for him and not the greater mead culture as a whole. He says he just needs to schedule meetings with all the guests who are up for calls.
Well, I mean, if they're about making mead, then they're all for all of us.
Yeah, Chris, if they're about making mead, then it is for the greater mead culture. So that's why we're all here, to make better mead.
And as Bob is telling Josh right now, if you've used too much lavender, you get soap.
You get soap. Yeah, same with roses.
Yeah, you got to have a light touch with lavender.
Yeah. I made a lavender mead once, and I did it with regular honey and lavender flowers, and it actually came out pretty good. I managed to not get soap, even though I really wasn't sure what I was doing.
You use fresh flowers?
I use dried flowers. But yeah, I put them in primary too, because at that point in time, okay. Here's a good question for you, Steve, because I'm curious what you do, and I've heard what a lot of other people are doing. Are you fermenting fruit/spices and other things other than honey in primary, or are you adding them in secondary, or both?
All the fruit will go in primary.
Any
spices probably in secondary, and then I'm going for a short contact time. You should probably no more than 72 hours.
Straight spices,
and
or
if
do you
I'm
make
not,
a tea?
No, I've never done a tea. I'd rather. I mean, so yeah, your mead should be. Generally, if I'm adding spices to something, it's probably going to be on the bigger side, perhaps. So it's probably going to be at least 10% alcohol. So I'm not really worried about spices going in there. So I'll just chuck them in the secondary, and then I'll taste it. Probably after a day, and then see where it's at, and make a decision from there. Longer, good, and then rack it as soon as I get to where I want it to be. And if it's something I haven't played with before and I'm uncertain of, then I will take part of the batch and rack it into a smaller vessel, and then add the spices to that, so I have some of the original mead to blend it back if I overdo it.
Okay, that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, because, as I've said, having been a beer judge for 15 years and judging mead for that set amount of time, one of the worst categories, you always think you're always hopeful, but you get into the open category and you got all these what turned out to be train wrecks because people really overdo it. It's cinnamon. I was like, yeah, it's like way too much cinnamon. There's no honey here, or so there's no balance here.
We call those weird-a-mells.
Weird-a-mells,
because they're those are the ones where you get like strawberry cinnamon chipotle bay mead. Because they're in open, because they don't fit. They're not melomels, they're not methylglens, they're not anything. They're lots of things.
Melomethagrin.
Melomethomels. And so we started calling them weird-a-mells, Pete and I, years and years and years ago, and it kind of caught on. It's still technically BJCP open category, but weird-a-mells.
I like that.
Yeah.
I've been known to chuck the odd Chivette part in my weird-a-mells.
She has.
Sanitized, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about oak?
Yeah. What do you do for oak?
We haven't talked about
that. I have not played a lot with oak, and I've been more interested in doing that, but I just haven't done a lot with it. I've done some barrel aging, but I haven't done much with oak. And I think that, from my perspective, I haven't seen a lot of, as a judge, I haven't seen a lot of people adding oak, really. What do you guys think? Have you seen people? Is that becoming more prevalent?
Yes, it is very, very popular, and at least in the Mazer Cup, we've seen quite a lot of it. And it got to the point, because for the longest time, BJCP, if you put oak in your traditional, then it wasn't a traditional anymore by BJCP category.
Right.
And they changed that, because so many people were oaking their traditionals, because, they're treating it like wine, basically.
Right.
Yeah. And
which I think is great.
Yeah. And so we're seeing a lot more. At least I judge traditionals in two separate flights, two separate categories. I judged sweets and semi-sweets at the Mazer last year. And I would say 2/3 of them were oaked.
Okay.
Yeah. And
were they well oaked or poorly oaked?
Yes and no. Some of them were very well oaked, and some of them were like so over oaked that they made you want to like spit it across the room. It just depends. I mean, it's like you're saying, some people don't understand subtlety. They or they don't
Right.
know how to create subtlety, so they just chuck it in there, or they put it in the barrel and leave it in there, or whatever, and they don't realize, yes, you need to be tasting this, you need to be checking this constantly, because it happens a lot quicker